It was the kind of windless September night that made the town of Delbrook feel like a forgotten place. The kind of stillness that pressed against your skin, heavy and strange, like something was waiting to happen. When the posters appeared stapled crookedly to phone poles and shop windows overnight, no one knew who had put them up. They looked aged already, the colours dull and curling at the edges, showing a grinning clown with the words, "One night only. The carnival comes where it's least expected." Michael Trent, a 45-year-old electrician, had never believed in superstitions or urban legends. He scoffed at the whispers in the town bar, calling them small-town nonsense. But something about the poster had stayed with him, something in the clown's eyes maybe, or the way his 11-year-old son, Aidan, kept asking about it with an excitement Michael hadn't seen since his wife passed away. By the time dusk fell the following Saturday, the outskirts of Delbrook were buzzing. Not with engines or chatter, but with something harder to describe. The air smelled of burnt sugar and metal. Families walked cautiously through the open gates that had appeared overnight at the old Miller field. No trucks, no workers, just lights strung between rusted poles and faded tents already staked into place. It was as if the carnival had grown from the earth overnight. Michael held Aidan's hand tighter than usual. He wasn't scared, not exactly, but something about the atmosphere felt wrong. As they passed through the entrance, a man dressed in a patched ringmaster's coat bowed low, his face hidden beneath a porcelain mask. "Welcome, welcome," he crooned. "We've been expecting you." The carnival wasn't like the ones Michael remembered from his youth. The games were eerily silent, run by figures who barely moved. Some didn't speak at all. There was a carousel that played no music, only the sound of whispering wind as the horses creaked and turned slowly in place. Aidan begged to ride it, and Michael reluctantly agreed, staying close. But as the ride began, he noticed the horses' eyes. They moved, tracking him. Michael laughed nervously, telling himself he was just on edge. But when Aidan came off, he looked pale, his small voice trembling. "Dad," one of the horses whispered my name. Michael blinked. "It what?" Aidan nodded, eyes wide. "It said it missed me." Trying to shake the unease, they walked deeper into the grounds. Everything seemed too quiet. No laughter, no distant screams of delight. Only the calliope music, shrill and off-key, bleeding from a tent at the far end of the field. They passed a fortune-teller's booth, where an old woman stared through cloudy eyes at Michael. "You brought him here," she hissed. "He can't leave now." Michael grabbed Aidan's hand, muttering about drunks and actors. But he was sweating now. The air seemed thicker, the ground colder. They passed a mirror maze, and Michael caught his own reflection. It didn't move when he did. It just stood there, watching him. They tried to leave, but the entrance was gone, not blocked, gone. In its place, only more tents, ones they hadn't seen before. Michael spun around trying to retrace their steps, but the layout had changed. "Dad, I don't like this," Aidan said, his voice shaking. "I don't think we're in Delbrook anymore." They stumbled into a puppet show next, except the stage was empty. Then, slowly, the curtains rose, and on strings descended tiny versions of themselves. Michael and Aidan puppets, moving with grotesque precision. The puppet Michael shouted, in his own voice, "You should have stayed home." A scream ripped through the air from one of the nearby tents. Michael ran toward it, dragging Aidan. Inside was a small crowd of motionless people, staring blankly at a stage where contortionists bent in inhuman ways, backs cracking, arms spinning full circles. One of them turned her head fully backward and looked directly at Aidan. "You're next," she said, smiling. Michael pulled his son back and ran blindly, past a popcorn stand where the kernels twitched and popped without heat. The man selling them didn't have eyes, just deep, dark holes where they should have been. And yet he grinned. "Try one." On the house. Finally, they found the Ferris wheel, towering and silent. A sign read, "Escape ride. One time only." Michael didn't hesitate. He lifted Aidan into a cart and jumped in after him. The wheel groaned to life, lifting them slowly. The higher they rose, the more they could see. The carnival wasn't just tents and rides. It went on for miles, a patchwork sprawl of horrors, cages, and things that moved wrong. At the top, the ride stopped. The view was dizzying. Michael felt something tugging at his legs. He looked down. Hands. Pale, thin hands reaching from beneath the seat, trying to pull them through the floor. Michael kicked and screamed, pulling Aidan close. The hands didn't belong to anything. They simply emerged from the air. A voice echoed in the wind. "You brought him here. He belongs now." Then, just as suddenly, the hands vanished. The wheel began its descent, but when they reached the bottom, there was no ground, just blackness, endless, open black. Michael shut his eyes and jumped with Aidan in his arms. He awoke on the edge of Miller Field at sunrise. Aidan beside him, crying, covered in dirt and blood. The carnival was gone. No tents, no lights, no music. Only tire tracks in the grass and a single balloon deflating slowly. No one believed them. Not the sheriff, not the neighbors. "You must have wandered off into the woods," they said. Aidan had a nightmare, that's all. But Michael knew what he saw. He remembered the puppet version of himself, the eyes in the carousel horses, the whispering wind. Weeks passed, but Aidan changed. He didn't laugh anymore. He wouldn't sleep unless Michael sat by his bed. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, he whispered things, words in a voice that wasn't quite his. Once, Michael swore he saw the shadow of a Ferris wheel on his wall, though there was nothing outside. Alan wasn't the type to take detours. But that evening, April 6th, he missed his usual exit and ended up on a cracked, forgotten stretch of Maple Street. That's where he saw it. A lone poster dangling from a crooked street lamp, its colours faded yet strangely alive. "The Night Carnival, one night only," it read, with no address, just a cryptic message below. "If you're ready to remember, you'll find it." His stomach tightened. It triggered something, not a memory, but a feeling, a wrongness he couldn't explain. He stared at the clown sketched beneath the text, its grin lopsided, its paper eyes glinting like glass. He didn't tell anyone, not even Emily, his 16-year-old daughter. That night, he dreamed of carousels spinning in reverse, of mirrors bending backward, of whispers in his ear saying, "You were here before." He woke drenched in sweat. When he checked his phone, there was a new message from an unknown number. "Tomorrow, County Road 13, dusk, bring her." Alan told Emily they were going to see a meteor shower outside town. She was reluctant, but agreed. As they turned down County Road 13, the GPS cut out. No signal. No streetlights, just fog rolling in like smoke. Then, music, old carnival music, faint and distorted. They crested a hill and saw lights in the field ahead. It didn't look like a carnival. It looked like a graveyard dressed up for children. The Ferris wheel turned slowly without a sound. The booth stood lopsided. There were no cars, no other visitors. And yet, the entire field pulsed like it was breathing. Emily hesitated. "Dad, this isn't right." Alan felt it too, a pressure in his chest. Still, he said, "We'll only stay for a minute." They walked in. No one greeted them, but eyes watched from within shadows. Booths operated themselves. A claw machine clinked without quarters. A ring toss spun in slow motion. And in every reflective surface, Alan noticed the same thing. Not his face, but a version of it. Younger, confused, bleeding. Emily stopped at a photo booth. "Let's take one," she said suddenly, as if possessed. The flash exploded. Alan pulled the photo strip out. 4 frames, but only one of them contained Emily. The others showed him with someone else, a woman, the same woman in all 3 frames, pale, wide eyes, holding his hand. He dropped the photo. A carnival worker approached them, his mouth sewn shut. He gestured to a large tent in the center. "What is that?" Emily asked. Alan shook his head, but the worker extended his hand, pointing. Emily walked first. Inside, the tent was pitch dark, until lights flickered, showing a theater, empty seats, and a single screen. It played home videos, not theirs, Alan's. Him, as a boy, hiding under tables, screaming in night terrors. Then more recent ones, Alan sleepwalking, standing outside Emily's room, talking in a voice that wasn't his. He whispered things like, "She doesn't know what she is," and "She needs to return." Emily backed away from him, terrified. "What the hell is this, Dad?" They ran into a building labeled Reflections. Inside, the maze of mirrors distorted more than their bodies. It twisted memories. Alan saw himself leaving the hospital 17 years ago, a baby in his arms. A nurse behind him whispered, "You've taken what was not meant to live." Emily stopped in front of a tall mirror. Her reflection was smiling, though she wasn't. Then it moved. "I'm not yours," it said. "I was borrowed." Alan screamed, grabbing her away. The mirror cracked as they ran. Behind them, something chased them, shifting, shrieking, repeating Emily's name in dozens of overlapping voices. They found themselves at the base of the Ferris wheel. A man in a red coat stood there, his eyes like pits. "You're here again, Alan," he said calmly. "But this time, only one can leave." Alan stepped in front of Emily. "Take me. Leave her out of this." The man shook his head. "That was your wish last time. You offered her before. Do you remember?" Alan reeled. Visions flashed. Him here before, years ago, alone. A desperate father begging for one more chance. "She died in that crash," the man said, "and you asked to bring her back, but now payment is due." Emily screamed. The ground opened beneath them, revealing a carousel with creatures instead of horses, half human, half remembered. The man gestured. One ride, one memory returned, one truth faced. Alan stepped on. As the carousel spun, time cracked. He saw it all. He had made a deal. The girl wasn't his. She was a reconstructed soul, borrowed from the space between life and death. He had lived with a lie for 16 years. The ride stopped. Emily was gone. A note lay in her place. You chose again. She chose not to remember. Alan looked up, and the carnival was fading into mist. Alan woke up in his bed. Alone. No photos of Emily on the walls. No evidence of her existence. But every night, at 9:13 p.m, the door to her room creaked open, and sometimes, in the mirror beside it, Alan saw her reflection, standing silently, watching him, smiling. 1 week later, as Alan sat blankly at the kitchen table, he heard the doorbell ring. No one had used it in years. On the porch stood a girl, not Emily, but her face was almost the same, except older, colder. "Are you Alan Granger?" she asked. "I have a message from the keeper." Alan tried to shut the door, but she slid her foot inside. "The agreement is incomplete," she said, voice unnaturally calm. "Your mind may forget, but the carnival doesn't." From her coat, she pulled out the photo strip, the one from the booth, except now, all 4 frames showed the same girl. Her, the messenger. Alan followed her. Against every instinct, she led him into the woods behind his house, where fog pulled unnaturally between trees. There, impossibly, the carnival stood once again, dim lights flickering, the Ferris wheel turning, silent and slow. "They left a gate open," the girl said, "for you." He stepped in, but this time he didn't feel human. His hands were paler. His thoughts echoed like they weren't entirely his. The barker at the gate looked up and grinned. "Welcome back, Alan. We've kept your place warm." It started with a whisper, not from a person, but from the wind itself. A low, rustling murmur that carried through the cracked streets of Elridge, curling into homes like smoke. "It's back," it seemed to say. The carnival. The one that hadn't shown its face in over 30 years. The one that was never supposed to return. No one knew when it had vanished. The old folks just stared off when asked, muttering things like, "It didn't leave, it waited." Still, curiosity is stronger than caution in towns where boredom is the reigning curse. So when the crimson gold posters started appearing overnight, nailed to poles, fluttering under street lamps, people came alive. "The Phantasma Carnival, 1 night only," they read. And beneath the title, in barely visible lettering, "No entry without the blood ticket. I don't chase ghosts. I fix engines, scrape grease from my hands, and live quietly." But something about that flyer, it crawled under my skin. At 43, life had settled into a dull hum, and I was tired of silence. So when the music began, distant calliope notes warping in the wind, I felt something deep in my gut twist. I followed the sound to the river bend. The field that was once a ruin was now alive with flickering lights and rides groaning to life. There were no trucks, no workers, no signs of setup. Just the carnival, breathing, living. And from the shadows of the entrance arch, 2 porcelain masked jesters stood silently. One tilted its head as I passed, not a greeting, a warning. Inside, the air was thick with burnt sugar and something metallic, blood, faint but there. The crowd was wrong. Familiar faces were few. The rest, their smiles were carved too wide, their laughter hollow and too perfectly timed. I passed a popcorn stand where the vendor handed out bags with a mechanical twitch. His eyes never blinked. When I turned to look again, He was gone. One child held a red balloon. Its string never moved, even in the breeze. I looked up. It wasn't attached to anything, just floating, held by nothing. When the child saw me watching, he smiled. Every tooth in his mouth was the same, identical, too smooth. He whispered, "They're hungry tonight." I tried to find an exit, but every turn led deeper in. The rides groaned like they were in pain. The carousel spun without riders, its horses snarling under chipped paint. A funhouse mirrored not your face, but your regrets. I saw my father, dead 20 years, staring back at me, eyes filled with blame. From behind me, a clown laughed. I turned. No one. Just shadows moving where they shouldn't. I felt breath on my neck and turned again. Still nothing, but the cold lingered. A cold not of weather, but presence. In the center of the grounds stood the big top. Red gold, pulsing like a heartbeat. A cracked sign above read, "Finale begins when you're ready." Lanterns flickered inside, though no fire was visible. I stepped through the flaps. The tent was far larger within, impossible in size. The crowd inside didn't turn to look. Their heads twitched, trembled, as if held in place by invisible strings. From the ring, a woman rose, her limbs unfolded like a marionette's, bending at angles that defied bone. Her voice pierced through the stillness. "Tonight we show your truth." One by one, she summoned people to the center mirror. Each time the tent echoed with screams, not of fear, but loss. Their reflections melted, and their bodies followed. When she called my name, I ran. I didn't know the mirror knew my name. I sprinted through tent corridors that shouldn't have existed. Each step felt like sinking. Behind me, footsteps, heavy and wet, slapping the canvas. Mirrors lined the hall, each showing something wrong. In one, I had no eyes. In another, I smiled while I bled out. In the last, I was already dead. I crashed through a curtain and into darkness. The laughter followed, high-pitched, layered, wrong. I saw the jester again, standing still, but this time, his mask cracked open. Beneath, it was my face, but older, rotting. The carnival began to change. The booths twisted into cages. The games screamed when you lost, and screamed louder when you won. I passed a strength test machine where a man had driven the mallet through his own head, still standing upright. His bell rang continuously. No one stopped it. Children chased each other in circles, their shadows taller than their bodies. One passed me and hissed, "You're part of it now." I stumbled backward into a puppet stand. Each doll bore someone's face from town. One had mine. Its eyes moved. Then came the smell, rot and decay, but fresh, like meat left out only an hour. I found a tent labeled "Lost and Found." Inside were things: wedding rings, shoes, torn wallets, and photos. One was of my parents, taken at this very carnival. They had never told me they'd come here. I heard a calliope start up again. The tune was the same lullaby my mother used to hum when I was ill. I turned slowly. She stood at the edge of the tent, mouth sewn shut, eyes pouring black. She raised a hand and pointed behind me. The carousel was waiting. Its horses no longer animals. They were people now, half-formed, twitching, fused to wooden frames. One of them whispered, "Ride or remain." The jester reappeared, ticket in hand. My hands shook as I took it. It was wet. The moment I sat, the carousel screamed, not the ride. The thing itself. It spun violently, and the air tore around me. Faces flew past, eyes wide in terror, mouths open in endless screams. Then everything stopped. Silence. A single breath. My breath. I was alone. I awoke face down in the dirt. The sun was rising. The field was empty, but something was wrong. My clothes were damp with blood, not mine. My arms had markings, symbols I'd never seen. I staggered home, every step weighted with dread. No one remembered the carnival, not one person, not even the ones I'd seen there. They looked at me with pity. "You haven't been the same," they said. But I hadn't told them anything. In my garage, the balloon was there, still floating, waiting. And the flyer? Now it read, "The Phantasma Carnival, one night every year." And the blood ticket. It was pinned to my chest, pulsing faintly.